years, the discipline of history has gone down. We have produced very few world-class historians, so to say. Maybe we can count them on fingers. There are very few universities in Pakistan which have departments of history. We don't have too many institutions of history. In the province of Sindh, you can count the colleges where history is taught, and you can even count the teachers, lecturers who are teaching general history. Archives in Pakistan are not kept properly. There is lack of professional treatment of archives in the country. And instead of history, for the last 30-35 years, either social studies has replaced history in the schools, or Pakistan studies has replaced history. So the very discipline of history is not there anymore. It's only in a few universities that history department is there and people opt for history. So there arises the question that what is the future of this discipline in our country? Does it matter in Pakistan? And then we can also bring in other countries in our discussion and have a comparative analysis to see if the same trend is there in other South Asian countries. And Mr. A.G. Noorani is with us. Perhaps he would be able to tell us what's the state of this discipline in India or Bangladesh or other South Asian countries. So this is an open question. We have invited a few historians here. We all know Dr. Hamida Khoro is a very prominent historian of Pakistan. She has worked a lot in modern Indian history and modern history of Sindh. She has taught history in the University of Karachi and in Sindh University, and she has written a lot. Then Mr. Demidov, he's primarily a diplomat. But he has come with his knowledge of diplomacy of different regions. For the last 3 or 4 years he is in Pakistan, and we would try to benefit from his knowledge. And A.G. Noorani Saab, a very, very prominent writer who writes on the issues of history, politics and constitution, a very prolific writer. So in the company of these people, I hope that we will benefit, and once a question-answer session completes here, we'll open the floor so that others can also put their queries to these knowledgeable people. So I'll begin with Dr. Hamida Khoro, and I would ask her what is her impression of the state of history in Pakistan.
As you have said, Dr. Sam, it is abysmal. The state of teaching history, studying. I can't say that history as it has been enacted is unknown or inactive or whatever. History is being enacted every day, but we are doing our very best to hide the facts from our younger generation. The tragedy of history in Pakistan has been that from day one, there has been a very selective choosing of things to be told to our children, to be taught in schools, and so on, so that there has been a very skewed idea of what has happened. Why Pakistan, what happened in Pakistan, what happened after Pakistan was made. Last 70 years, nobody will be able to tell you exactly how it has developed. And the fact, and also there has been a huge amount of unspoken censorship. Nobody can question, there are national sacred cows, nobody can question what happened, anything about them. And so, the result of all this and of certain ideological axioms, these are things that you have to accept, so that you cannot discuss them. And I believe there may even be constitutional provisions for punishing people who discuss them. So the result is that there has been a sort of huge discouragement of research. No research takes place in Pakistan. As you said, the archives are in a terrible state, and anyhow, there's a story that in 1947, when freedom was given, on 15th of August 1947, in one or two districts of Sindh, the revenue clerks put their pens down and said, okay, the British have gone, now we don't need to write anymore. What has happened, this illustrates the fact that nobody bothers about recording facts, recording history, recording anything, and nobody bothers to research whatever there may be. And so we have a real closure of research in this country. I don't think you can point to any real study that has happened about, I can't think of any single book. The only thing has been, sort of small books pointing out errors in school books, like Aziz Ahmed's, I think Aziz Ahmed it was, that errors in history were pointed out and so on. But nobody actually has made the effort to correct it, write substantial books stating what happened. So that is the state of history now. In fact, I can say that it's not only government, but the intellectual class is itself resistant to any revision of history. Some years ago, I think this was the anniversary of Quaid-e-Azam's 100th anniversary, which was celebrated in a very big way in Pakistan. I was invited to a seminar in Lahore, where I went, and we were discussing the Quaid history. And I pointed out that Quaid himself was no Democrat, that he did many things in life which were anti-democratic, and so on. Things that are well known, you and I, and everybody knows them. Nobody responded. Everybody asked a question. Nobody responded. Nobody said a word. And afterward, I was completely boycotted. So much so that when I visited Lahore 30 years later, a journalist came up to me and said, "Madam, what do you think of Quaid-e-Azam now?" So I said, "I don't know why you're asking this." He said, "Well, you came here some time ago and you said you criticize him. That's because he dismissed your father. But now you still think." I said, "Well, anything I said was, my opinion still is. I mean, if you have any facts to deny that, you can tell us." But that is the sort of attitude, not only of the illiterate or anybody else, but actually of the educated journalists, academics, who cannot bear any upsetting of the accepted version of history. So that is the state in short.
Mr. Demidov, may I come to you now? You haven't spent much time in Pakistan, actually. But when you came here, you must have studied Pakistan's history. And do you think the knowledge you got through the books published in Pakistan was sufficient for you to come to a country for diplomatic purposes, or you had to rely on other sources also?
Thank you very much. As you rightly said, my main field of activity is diplomatic mission. But at the same time, I have a supplementary field of activities, that is the political science. I have a PhD degree in political science. That's why I cannot go in line with what is being discussed about the state of the teaching of history in Pakistan. Of course, when I came here, this is my first posting, not only in Pakistan but in South Asia in general. I knew almost nothing about what's going on here. I had to read a lot of books. I had to just learn much. But many books are being published about, well, relatively recent past. Starting with the partition, independence, different regimes in Pakistan. But of course, this is very important to see what we have just survived. But history for Pakistan, in my view, I will always just say that it's in my view, my subjective point of view. But let us not forget that I saw Pakistan as a country with deepest historical roots. Let us not forget Mohenjo-daro. Can you imagine? Can you find places like this in Western Europe or in America? No. Only maybe in China, Egypt, and that's it. Let us not forget Taxila, a place where ancient Greek civilization met ancient South Asian civilization. You know? And my question to you, to all of you, is whether an ordinary Pakistani knows about places that I mentioned, and knows what happened, what was the meaning, the historical meaning of those places and the events that took place there. Do not answer this question to me, answer to yourselves. And of course, we cannot forget Mughal civilization, a civilization of art and science, of beauty and philosophy, that brought much even to Western Europe, you know. On those items, unfortunately, books could not be found in Pakistan, in my view. Maybe I'm mistaken, maybe.
I'll come to you again.
Okay.
Let me come to Mr. A.G. Noorani. I'm tempted to ask that in India, for a larger part of its history after 1947, the history written was mostly under the influence of the Congress Party and its ideology. We can call it official historiography. Pakistan has also not come out of the ideological historiography or the official historiography. What do you think is the future of historiography in these two countries? Can we come out of the fold of official narrative and have independent narratives? You take that mic, yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You touched a problem which is very dear to my heart. As I learned to my cost with my book on Jinnah and Tilak, neither in India nor in Pakistan is anybody prepared to sacrifice the sacred cows. Let me begin. As somebody said that the wars between India and Pakistan were communal riots with tanks. The Congress-League conflict became India-Pakistan conflict. Let me begin with India. Cottage industries grew up. There's a Gandhian establishment with a base, publishers in Ahmedabad, Nehru establishment, Sardar Patel establishment, and a minuscule Maulana Azad establishment. Here in Pakistan, my education began with my belated first visit to Pakistan in February '84, where I had the honor of meeting Professor Hamida Khoro at the Muslim Seminar in Islamabad, and I was grateful to her for introducing me in Karachi to Nawab Bhakti, who declined to speak to me in Urdu and insisted I spoke to him in English. Now let me confine myself. At that first visit, I was there in Feroz Sons. Like a lightning, it struck me, this is a country with a grievance. I saw a whole shelf of books on partition. 37 years after the event, the kind of books I would not have seen in India. We were cheated on cabinet mission plan. Here, on cabinet mission plan, I tease my Pakistani friends. Was it, for God's sake, was it a reluctant necessity because the Congress reneged on the cabinet mission plan, or was it an achievement? You aspired for it, but Quaid-e-Azam did accept it. In fact, this morning when I mentioned these points, I could see visibly some people uncomfortable and said, forget the past, let's go on with the present. You cannot divorce yourself from the past, because it's only when you learn the lessons of past that you will profit by them. In India, the foreign policy of Jawaharlal Nehru, the fundamental question from the right angle, we should have been sterner with Pakistan, we should have been allies with America, and the classic thing of this kind is Jaswant Singh's book on Jinnah. I wonder why my Pakistani friends don't say through it. It's not a book in praise, Nabba Hubbe Imam, Wale be Zidde Yazid. It is not in praise of Quaid-e-Azam. It's an attack on Nehru, only on Nehru. The point of the matter is that the Hindu right wing there finds Nehru a convenient thing, and historiography is shaped accordingly. Now in Pakistan, what happened is this. Just as we had a cottage industry in India, with S. Gopal as the court historian, you had court historians here. But I regret to say, your students or your historians are not really keen on study. For example, several Indians have gone to India Office Library, now the British Library, consulted the records of 46, 47 and produced their own Indian, I call it Indian interpretation of the Kashmir conflict in Jordan. I have been pleading with my Pakistani academic friends, why don't you send a young, intelligent graduate student to London, help him out and ask him to, I want to know the Pakistani viewpoint. Now what has happened is that Lionel Carter, who helped with the documents on transfer of power, he has brought out the volumes of governor's reports on Punjab from 37 to 47. They are all available in India. Then he has brought out another volume on the reports of British High Commissioners and residents. Here I'm afraid, I'm sorry he is dead, but then I attacked him in his lifetime. Zaidi's volumes are a disgrace. I say it advisedly because the introduction is tendentious and he has suppressed material. A BD worker who seeks Quaid-e-Azam's permission, his letter is reproduced. All kinds of, there is no annotation. Who's Ralia Ram? He doesn't understand that she was a wife of a Christian politician. But if you see Hassan Zahi's book on the Rawalpindi conspiracy trial, you will find that he has quoted from Quaid-e-Azam's diary, Quaid-e-Azam's letters, Quaid-e-Azam's jottings, none of which is there in Jinnah papers edited by Zaidi. The result is that you get a very lopsided view of history from Quaid-e-Azam papers. Now, honestly, I plead guilty here. I revised a lot of my notions about Nehru as well as Jinnah, partly because of the selected works of Jawaharlal Nehru, partly. For example, from the selected works of Jawaharlal Nehru, I discovered the fact that contrary to many Indian apologists of Nehru, Nehru was very much behind the imprisonment of Sheikh Abdullah, between the dismissal of Sheikh Abdullah. And I also learnt Sheikh Abdullah did not want to accede to Pakistan. He had to accede to Pakistan because of the, I hate to say so, the arrogance of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who refused to meet him. He sent 2 emissaries to Pakistan. One of them was here at the time of the tribal raid. And here I will tell my Pakistani friends, the notion that Quaid-e-Azam did not support the tribal invasion of Kashmir is all nonsense. You will find in Francis Moody's diaries, which are there in the India office, Quaid-e-Azam knew about it and he fully backed it. So I'm afraid it's only when you learn all that, as George Kennan said, if you accept your own flaws, your opinion of the adversaries to that extent diminished. So we must begin, Indians must begin to understand where we went wrong. We went wrong because we thought Pakistan wouldn't last more than 6 months. And from the word go, India began a hostile attitude. Pakistanis, I'm afraid, had the same Jinnah attitude about legalism and for example, on my last visit to Pakistan a year ago, I told one of your most distinguished journalists, distinguished academics, an historian by the way, I said, do you know the Quaid-e-Azam was offered at Government House, Lahore, writing an offer that where the ruler's religion is different from the religion of the people, that there should be a plebiscite. Quaid-e-Azam said, exclude Junagadh, exclude Hyderabad, and I'll accept it. That offer included this clause, that the plebiscite in Kashmir will be jointly held by Indian and Pakistani troops. In other words, Pakistani troops would have been in Srinagar. How could they have been ejected? Now, had he accepted it and said, all right, give some better terms for Hyderabad, it could have been done. It was coupled with an invitation, come to Delhi as a state guest and we'll firm up the agreement. Just imagine, Quaid-e-Azam could have gone there as the place of his triumphs, as a first state visitor to India, stayed in Governor's house, Governor General's house. He could have visited the Muslim refugee camps. Imagine the morale, and history would have been taken a different course altogether. The Cold War would have been nipped in the bud. Now, if we don't learn a lesson from that, Indians have their own view of Kashmir as the integral part of India without the plebiscite. The fact is, there's a document of Nehru's 25th August 1952 in which he openly admitted to Sheikh Abdullah that sometime in 48 he had decided against a plebiscite. Publicly he said plebiscite, privately he said no. I can give you any number of such instances from the records. My point is this, I wish to heaven that historians, moderate ones, sensible ones from both sides could come together and try to discuss and produce, if not a joint, even a differing one, but a moderate one. The point is this, the society has a right to expect of its scholars the truth. And the scholar, the journalist, any intellectual serves his country best only when he serves the truth. There's no conflict. But unfortunately, right from the day one, our historians, academics, all began with this thing, with this notion that the interests of the country do not permit such writing. This persists in India today. I'm afraid it persists in a stronger form here. Now, India has produced historians like Joya Chatterjee. Her writing on the partition of Bengal, 2 books are fantastic. Here also there have been some noticed scholars, but I'm afraid there's a lot to go, because on my last visit to KLF last year, a Pakistani historian told me little is happening here. I'm afraid I've said enough to stir I wanted to initiate the discussion. I could be hopelessly wrong, but I'm very willing to stand corrected. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Nurani Saab. I'll come to you again. I'll have one more round of questions with the panel, and now I'll turn to Dr. Hamida Khodo, and I'll ask that we have been looking into the reasons why we couldn't have a good tradition of historiography in Pakistan. May I know if it has to do something with our being an ideological state? Pakistan proclaimed itself to be an ideological state right in the beginning. Does it have any impact on our historiography? Is history possible in an ideological state?
I don't know. The only other ideological state is Israel, I believe. And even there, I think there are some things that are taboo. Much more so here in Pakistan. I don't know if it was actually declared an ideological state in the beginning. It certainly was later. I think when certain forces in this institutions in this country became the guardians of the ideological and the geographical frontiers, nobody's actually defined the ideology of Pakistan. What is it? It's a very vague thing, but it holds us prisoner, that's for sure. Because if there's anything that people don't like, then they say this is against the ideology of Pakistan. What is the ideology? That needs to be defined. And I think it is time that we, as historians, I am a bit too old now, Jafar Saab, but there are many, I hope there are some young ones, I'm not sure, but I hope there are some young ones. Aisha Jalal is very good, but she's in diaspora. Locally, I can't think of any. There should be a real honest, as Nurani Sahib has suggested, an honest look at our history and an honest statement of it. I know that foreigners have written about Pakistan. A lot of foreigners have written. One can read Indian books, one can read American scholars and all that, and one has a good idea actually of the facts. But some locals need to write it for it to be accepted. And so your question was about ideological, whether that's a obstacle to writing history. Certainly is. If you have an idea of what the ideology is, then it's an obstacle, because we should not accept any curbs on the writing of history. We should have it as it is recorded. Look at the papers, and you can find, once you do, I've done the India Office archives, and really you can find almost anything. And the wonderful thing there is that all the administrators, the British administrators in India, have given their papers to India Office Library. And as Nurani Saab said, even Qaid-e-Azam, even the scribbles during meetings are on paper in his which I have used for my biography of my father. So they are papers are available if one wants to use them. Some in Pakistan, a whole lot in the India Office Library, and I've even visited the Trimurti House in India, and there's a lot of stuff there. And I'm sure nowadays in Pakistanis can go and visit that also. But we need gutsy, young, energetic historians to do that. All those who are gutsy, young and energetic and historians, put your hands up.
Thank you. Now I'll ask a question to Mr. Demidov. During the times of Soviet Union, we know that there was Institution of Oriental Studies there in Moscow, and it had a big reservoir of Oriental material. Is it still there, or researchers can go to your country for studies of their own countries?
Of course, it is still there, and I can introduce Deputy Director of this institute, Professor Belokrenitsky, who is just present here. And the researchers come and go. They exchange papers, speeches, whatever. So everything is there.
Okay. I mean, there was talk about the transfer of resources to Western countries. It was said that after the fall of Soviet Union, people started selling things. They have gone to American universities in Europe.
Okay, no? people have right to go to American university, but even to Pakistani universities as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, sure.
Let me pay a compliment to the leaders of the Russian Federation. You see, after the failed 1981 coup against Gorbachev, Communist Party was banned and its archives were opened. And the result is you have a detailed account of the Soviet decision making prior to the invasion of Afghanistan. it's fantastic how much material you have. But in India, the Henderson Brooks report on the debacle of the 63 war is forbidden, is banned. And the Chief Information Commissioner in a press interview has vindicated himself. Although when I attacked this ban, he congratulated me. So that's the stuff of the independence of our people. Now I want to just make a few points about Professor Kurote. Quaid-e-Azam was not only an autocrat, but he didn't envisage Pakistan as a democracy. And you'll find all the material in a book published by Oxford University Press, Karachi, Alan McGrath's The Destruction of Democracy. To begin with, he said he wanted to be Governor General. He presided over cabinet meetings. He had 4 portfolios. He presided over the Constituent Assembly. And what is more, he made himself legal advisor to the Constituent Assembly. It's like the chairman of a corporation making himself his legal advisor. Then his personal solicitor, he made a solicitor for the Federation. Not only that, but he had the cabinet pass a resolution that no settlement of Kashmir would be possible unless he accepted it. Secondly, he laid the foundations of every disaster that befell Pakistan. That speech at Dhaka is very well known, I need to remind you, but neglected his speech, I think in March or April, to the army at Quetta. Please study the constitution. The order must come from the Governor General. Now, whom was he aiming at? He was aiming at Liaquat Ali Khan. He systematically undermined the office of the governor, the institution of the cabinet. He meddled in foreign policy extensively. The negotiations were conducted by the Governor General. As Khalid B. Saeed said, he had the viceregal system. But above all, in very many matters, I'm afraid he broke the norms, which he was. He took the American ambassador to a picnic to persuade him to buy his property at Falstaff House. When the American ambassador said, I have already bought a property for my embassy, he said, what about your officers? Now, I can't imagine a Governor General telling the place to buy his personal property. You'll find many such peccadillos among Indian leaders also. But the point is, all our leaders had feet of clay, and let Ghalib be our guide in this and much else. लाजिम नहीं कि खिज़र की हम पैरवी करें, जानना कि एक बुजुर्ग हमें हम सफ़र मिले.
Thank you. One last question, Nurani Saab, to turn from this. In America, in Western countries, there is a new tradition of people's historiography, people's history. And we know of Howard Zinn and a number of other historians. In India, I know that in Aligarh they have started publishing a series of People's History of India. Here in Pakistan, a modest effort is being made, and Dr. Mubarak Ali is involved in that. How you look at it? What is the significance of this people's history?
I think it's a great significance. The subaltern thing was begun by Rai Chaudhary, but
A little bit in the mic.
yeah, but I will confess that I'm not into it. It's my ignorance. My approach has been very much that of a constitutional lawyer, dabbling into constitutional politics and international aid. This part of the history I've not studied, and I'll confess my ignorance.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we open the floor for a couple of questions. Yes, sir, please, you. Yeah. And I'll request you to be brief so that we can
Yes, please.
take as many questions as possible. And is there any volunteer here? Is there? Yeah, please be attentive to me. Now let him say, then afterwards the other gentleman.
My question is about the views expressed by Mr. Noorani and Madam Hamida Kuro about the undemocratic, some of, in their perception, attitudes or views of Quaid-e-Azam. My submission is, let us spare him. I think he did a lot for Pakistan and for the Muslims of India. Let's go ahead. One. Second, I have seen manuscript of Quaid-e-Azam's handwritten notes, brief notes, what will be the better system suitable for Pakistan, British parliamentary system or the presidential system. And he said, I think presidential system will be more suitable. However, things went in another way later on. My request is, let's spare him
Okay,
now.
okay, thank you. This
I
is
wish
a,
to answer this.
this is
I wish-
comment.
No, no, but let me answer that comment. This is precisely the mentality that we are up against. It's pathetic. Spare him because he did good. Nobody is infallible. Even the Holy Prophet, the chosen of Allah, chosen one of Allah, said, in religion you take my advice, but when it goes growing palm trees, it's a worldly matter, you follow judgment. I don't do it. And as far as Indian Muslims are concerned, I've done a lengthy piece for Criterion magazine. He turned his back on Indian Muslims. He exploited them later on. There's a minutes in the Zaidi papers of the last meeting with Kurd Muslims. He said, I have no advice to offer. Your fate will depend on relations between India and Pakistan. That is what we were reduced to.
Okay, thank you.
Quaid-e-Azam had no advice for Indian Muslims.
Next question, please.
I'm Inder Rahuja, I'm human rights activist. And,
Your mic is not working. Yeah.
I would want to say the hello. The question, the topic is, does history matter in Pakistan? I would say the history matters to the lot, because if we don't, history is the fact and truth. If we don't tell our children and in the schools from the primary towards the further, the truth, the discourse of the nation depends on the truthful history.
Yes, very right.
Since, one thing is that, since childhood, I have come to know that we have been taught from the Muslim and Islamic perspective, the history of Pakistan. We need correction in that, rewrite in this, until and unless, still till today, except Mubarak Ali, I don't find other historians, Pakistani historians, to go in a right direction. They must revisit from the beginning and
Right. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
A lady here, excuse me, bring it here
I would
to madam.
request them to identify themselves.
Yeah, kindly tell your name and then your question.
My name is Rehana Alam and I'm just an ordinary citizen. And my question is, do you think it's a cultural matter? In our culture, we do not question people who are older than us or whom we revere. So do you think that it's a cultural thing rather than anything else, because of which we do not tend to tell the truth about everything?
Yes, it's a very good question. I mean, who would like to answer?
I would like to answer.
Okay.
You see, this hero worship is not absent in the West. Make no mistake about it. Whether it was de Gaulle or Churchill. But Churchill almost single-handedly served Britain. And you will find shelves of books attacking Churchill. The trouble is with Indians is, we became nationalistic. It was Congress versus League and India versus Pakistan. We were born in discord. So we had, the Indians had this. By the way, whatever I've said about Quaid-e-Azam, I've said similar things, not only about Jinnah, but not only about Jawaharlal Nehru, but I've called Sardar Patel a Hindu communist in my own country, and I've attacked Gandhi for being partial to Hindus. So much, okay. I do not care about the Ratcliffe line. Intellectually for me, the Ratcliffe line does not exist. I love this country, Pakistan. I have many friends here. That apart, I think the stability, not only the stability, the happiness of the region depends on Pakistan being a strong, flourishing state. So Quaid-e-Azam, I yield to nobody in this hall in my respect and admiration of Quaid-e-Azam. But as I said, I would adopt the same attitude of critical scrutiny of the record that I've done for Jawaharlal Nehru on Kashmir, where I felt that he backed out of the plebiscite, where I felt for Gandhi that he was the main man behind the Congress quibbling over the cabinet mission plan, and Sardar Patel on the Hyderabad.
Thank you. You, please. Yeah. Would you just pass it on to him? After him, you can take it.
Hello.
Yeah.
My question is, when it comes to history mattering in Pakistan, is the foundation for it not completely flawed in the first place? Because when we talk about Pakistani history, we can talk about, as he said, that this is a country with a grievance. So we can talk about partition and the 66 years that followed partition, but essentially there is no Pakistani identity. It's a passport, it's a nationality. There is no Pakistani culture. We can speak of Pakhtun history, we can speak of Punjabi history, Sindhi, Balochi history. Yes, we have Mohenjo-daro and we have Taxila, but Mohenjo-daro was a part of the Indus Valley civilization, which is no more. And it is our land, yes. But that is why people can't seem to relate to it, because those people are no more. That culture is no more. Taxila is a part of the Gandharan civilization. That is no more either.
May please stop that light. I disagree with you.
Excuse me. ये light अगर थोड़ा कम कर सकें. Dr. Hamida Khoro is responding to this.
I think you are absolutely wrong about the Indus Valley civilization and the Gandhara civilization not being relevant, because they are the foundation of our civilization. The civilization now is derived from, I've been writing books of children's histories of these different provinces recently. And I've discovered, without thinking that I would, I wrote first about Sindh, which is of course the gift of the Indus through history. And then I went to Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And what I discovered was the essential unity of the Indus Valley civilization. That there was a huge internal connection between all the areas that I studied, from the north to the south, because of this economic commonality of the Indus and of the river culture and of the river economy and so on. So, okay, and that has lasted for thousands of years. It's 5,000 years to, let's say, the 19th century, when we became a transformed country because of British intervention and industry and so on. But there has been, the life of this area has been very, solidly based on this single source. And the Gandhara civilization is absolutely a one-off in the world. I mean, it's a huge achievement. The oldest university in the world, almost, I should say. And the remains are still there. 1,000 years of Buddhism, which have surely influenced us.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll take another question from this lady. Yeah. Your good name first, please.
My name is Alia Anjum.
Okay.
And it's more of a comment than a question. I was hoping to hear more about history in general, just as a gentleman here brought up the point, but we seem to have focused only on 1947. So that's the point I was making. And I wanted some advice for the visiting foreigner here, that at the end of the day, this is Jinnah's Pakistan.
No, I don't understand the question. What's the question?
She was expecting more discussion apart from 1947, but we have time constraint in 1 hour. You cannot resolve all the issues of history. But you are right that there is room for further discussion. Yes, you please. Just a sec. Yeah. After him you can take it, okay?
Thank you. My name is Salim Aziz Khan, and my question is that, as she said, that why is it just 1947? Because we have a much bigger and vaster history. This whole region was interconnected actually, and we as people here have very little official access to that history. It's not taught in our curriculum. It's not taught. Even the Gandhara civilization or the Indus Valley civilization is mentioned very briefly. It's not part of our psyche. The whole connectivity of this region actually is not taught to us, although we had a very rich cultural background. So I think this larger context of history must be made very important, and that would be Pakistan, because it's in the hub of this region, so it would be very relevant. Thank you.
Right. Pass it on to him. You take this mic. After this, we'll come to you. Yeah.
My question is very simple. Where Jinnah was born? Because we don't know in the history. I am 47 years old. I am double master's. But I don't know because my friend says that he was not born in Karachi. But
Okay. Okay. Let's see what Hamida Khoro has to say on it.
I'm ready. With this question, I stand defeated. Is it Jirak? Is it Karachi? Well, I can tell you that he was not born in Wazir Mansion, because Miss Jinnah was, when Wazir Mansion was invented by the bureaucrats of Pakistan as the home of Mr. Jinnah's family, Miss Jinnah, who was alive, was taken by this officer to tour the Karadar and see the mansion. So she looked quite intently at all these buildings and everything, and they pointed out, this is Wazir Mansion, your home. She said, well, the streets have changed a lot, but I must certainly say that this is not the home that we were ever brought up in. So that is certainly not their house. Whereas if he was born in Karachi or in Jirak or wherever, it's a big question mark.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I think both Indians and Pakistanis are agreed on one point. Muhammad Ali Jinnah was born on 23rd March 1940. The Pakistanis remember him as the leader of the Pakistan movement, and the Indians hate him as the leader of Pakistan movement, as if the Qaeda-Azam's most fruitful ventures were as the Central Assembly and as a peacemaker. As he said in a speech at Aligarh in 1938, people was to call me because I was running from pillar to post, and he had made this remark, in those days I knew no pride. But if you read those volumes of Jinnah in the Central Legislative Assembly, Lala Lajpat Rai said, look at this man's attendance in the Central Assembly. There was no Supreme Court, Federal Court or even High Court. He used to sacrifice his lucrative practice in Bombay, go and attend endlessly. He would speak on the Post Office Bill, on the Industrial Disputes Bill, on anything, and speak intelligently and as a moderate, and always on the side of freedom. In fact, there was not one case of a leader in preventive detention for whom Jinnah did not speak up. That includes Vallabhbhai Patel. If you see Jinnah's speeches from 1910 to 1947, you see the real greatness of Muhammad Ali Jinnah.
Thank you. Yes, your question.
Namely, Shakil Shahzad. My question is concerning about the Russian Federation, Russian USSR. I am just asking about the dissociation of the USSR after the era of the dissociation of when the USSR is the superpower. And what are the history? As far as Pakistan is concerned, we are complete blackout after the creation of the Bangladesh history. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, at the primary level, we don't tell about children about what are the Bangladesh and what are the creation of the Bangladesh and behind the scenario and the causes of root causes. Sir, I am asking about what are the meantime matter or meantime position in your institutions and studies about the dissociation of USSR. Thank you very much.
About the
Dissociation of USSR. Disintegration.
Okay. I mean, it's a very long question.
It's a very long question. You know, of course, we can speak for hours and hours on the issue.
You just tell us if it is a subject of research in Russia.
Of course it is.
Okay.
Of course it is. Because the process was very long and very complicated. The Soviet Union, as it was before 1991, of course needed to be reformed. Because, you remember Gorbachev started the process called perestroika, which is in fact was restructuring, His idea was to rebuild the state from top to bottom to top, from top to bottom, the whole of it. Right. Well, of course. So it was.
Any other question now? Yes. Acha. After you, I'll go there. Where's the mic? Okay, okay. I can't see who is it.
Hello, my name is Dr. Waqar Zaidi. I teach history here at school. It seems to me that the question of history is a question of memory and remembrance. 1947 seems to have left us with a lot of detritus, myths about Jinnah and others, and things like the two-nation theory that it still sort of seem to crop up today. So my question is, or rather my statement is, isn't the question of history in Pakistan partially a question about needing to forget what we know about 1947, in a way, forget it so that we can look forward and not be held back by sort of a lot of myths, essentially?
I think we have talked a lot about 47. Time and again we revert to 47, though our topic is, general, state of history as a discipline in Pakistan. Yes, you please. Where's the mic? I'll appreciate if you go beyond 47. Okay. Just a second, let her ask and then I'll come to you. Okay. Quick. Yes. Mic is in your hands.
Yeah, actually I wanted to go beyond. My name is Rabela and I teach history in history of civilization in Edith University to architects. So actually I wanted to make a comment that it's more about, like this gentleman said, that we do not find a connect with Mohenjo-daro and other Gandharan civilization and all. I think it's more about celebrating and appreciating our heritage, taking our kids there, making them, creating awareness, and I think after that history will start mattering to all of us.
Okay.
And I think it should be made a part of like an exercise in schools and all. Take your kids there and make them aware of the history. That's
right.
how I think it will start
Right.
mattering.
Okay, thank you. You take the mic.
My name is Kuratulain and I teach history, Pakistan studies at a local school. I'm sorry, but I'll again be reverting to 47. As Mr. A.G. Noorani, I would like you to recommend me a well-researched book on the history of India, Pakistan. What, in your opinion, is a well-researched book?
Okay.
Samuel Burke, a Pakistani historian, did a really good job on Indo-Pak relations. But I don't think there's one single book which I could recommend. And in any case, I'm not a scholar enough to recommend any book on Indo-Pak relations. What you have to do is various volumes. For example, the State Department volumes on foreign relations of the United States, the South Asia volume. Then umpteen area studies like Kashmir. Kashmir itself will... I'm sorry, I can't think of a single book which will cover the entire span of Indo-Pak relations. But if you find there are some very good books on on 47, there's one book on the refugee movement which is a classic, published by Oxford University Press, Karachi, Wazila Zamindar.
Zamindar, yeah.
Yes, it's excellent, based on archival material. It shows that the Muslim refugees wanted to return to their homes in Delhi. They were prevented by Sardar Patel.
Your question, please. He is there before you.
बुजुर्गों के भी सुन लें आप लोग जनाब डॉक्टर जफर साहब माजरत के साथ मैं अपनी कौमी ज़बान उर्दू में गुफ्तगू करना ज़्यादा पसंद करूँगा।
सवाल कीजिए।
सवाल ये है कि माजी जिन कौमों का माजी दरख्शां होता है वो हाल को अच्छा करता मुस्तकबिल भी संवरता है। तो अल्लाह का शुक्र है कि हमने हिंदुस्तान में बहशत मुसलमान 1000 साल हुकूमत की, लेकिन एक जो हमने अपना एक कल्चर था वो हमें ज़बरदस्ती ना हिंदू कौम पे ना किसी कौम पे दिया। तो हमारा तो इसका माजी दरख्शां है। उसी के तसल्सल में मैं कहूँगा कि मैं सीपी जो आजकल मध्य प्रदेश कहलाता है वहाँ से बिलोंग करता हूँ, और जब पाकिस्तान बना तो तकरीबन 11 साल का था, और सन 45 में जनाब नूरानी साहब तो हिस्ट्री से बहुत ही वाक़े और हिंदुस्तान के चप्पे चप्पे से कि वहाँ पे विंध्या मंदिर स्कीम चली थी सीपी में, जो 3% मुसलमान थे और 97% मराठा हिंदू, कि वो मुसलमानों को शुद्ध करना चाहते थे। उसका मुसलमानों ने मुकाबला किया और मुस्लिम लीग ने भी जो भी उस वक्त था किया था। तो क्या ये कहना, और फिर दूसरा कि नूरानी साहब ने कहा कायदे आज़म की जमहूरियत का, उसका भी मैं आई विटनेस हूँ कि हिजरत करके हम मशरक़ी पाकिस्तान गए। सन 48 में कायदे आज़म रहमतुल्लाह अलैह को पलटन मैदान में तक़रीर करते सुना, और उन्होंने जमहूरियत का अवाम के पास गए कि इस मुल्क की लैंग्वेज उर्दू होगी और बाकी दीगर, और उसमें उसका ऐनी शाहिद हूँ कि ढाका के बंगाली ने उर्दू को डिफेंड किया, जबकि नवाखाली के बंगाली ने प्रोटेस्ट किया था। तो कहने का मतलब कायदे आज़म इसका लिबरल जमहूरियत पसंद, और जो मुमलकत को बहुत से हमारे इस अहद के मौरखीन कहते हैं कि इस्लाम के नाम पे हासिल नहीं किया था, उस कलमे की बुनियाद पर वो डाला। तो कहने का मकसद ये है कि ये नौजवान नस्ल को हिस्ट्री करेक्ट करनी है हमने, यानी कि माजी जो है, क्योंकि जिन कौमों का माजी दरख्शा होता है वो हमेशा फख्र करती है, और पाकिस्तान को उसी नजरिए के तहत संवारना है, और कश्मीर भी पाकिस्तान का इंटीग्रल पार्ट है।
जी बिल्कुल, बहुत शुक्रिया इस कमेंट के लिए। वन लास्ट क्वेश्चन, ओके? नहीं, टाइम नहीं है, वी आर रनिंग आउट।
Hello, my name is Vasu Abbasi, and I nearly forgot my question over there, but I wanted to ask that when I read the book Murder of History by K.K. Aziz, I realized that there was a lot of distortion in what we read in our schools and everyday life. Now, I wanted to know that the official narrative that we have with Pakistan, was it because that it was necessary to keep Pakistan as an entity, for that narrative was developed, or was it a systematic destruction of history of local areas like Punjab, Sindh, for some other reason?
Honestly speaking, I haven't understood your question. आप
What is it?
नहीं, मेरी समझ में नहीं आया. What is precisely?
What I'm saying that official narrative that Pakistan has regarding our history, was it because that it was for the survival of Pakistan as an entity, or was there a systematic destruction for some other reason?
Of what?
I'm sorry, we haven't gathered it. We may talk about it later. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this. You're coming to this session, and I'm sure that the themes of history are such that we can keep on talking on them, and we have benefited a lot from our panel. I thank the panel, Mr. Noorani, Mr. Demidov, Dr. Hamida Khoro, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
You are in Karachi, or you are? Well, you should read my children's books because they cover all that.